Hello, everybody. This is Ray Petree back with Petree's Pit, and I'm joined once again by my tag team partner, the Arn Anderson to my Tully Blanchard, JDO Double G, Jordan. How's it going, sir?
Going good. How's it going, everybody?
So we watched WrestleDream together last Saturday, and we liked a lot of the matches. Um, and then it culminated in I think a now infamous ending, the WrestleDream. Bryan Danielson versus Jon Moxley for the AEW World Championship. If Bryan loses, this is the end of his full-time wrestling career. Um, and I guess we should make that distinction between full-time career and retiring, because he's not necessarily retiring. He might come back in a part-time wrestling role. Um, but the rumor and innuendo is he's been working without a contract. It's just on good faith with Tony Khan being the champion, waiting until he loses to go away for a little while, and then I guess he's going to restructure his deal. Maybe he already has. We don't really know. Um, and it was quite the ending. They were in Tacoma, Washington, which is about 80 miles from Bryan Danielson's hometown. He's from the state of Washington, of course, Aberdeen. And AEW has often been accused of booking for the hometown crowd and doing what they think the local market would like to see, and this was not the case. Jon Moxley and Danielson had a slobber knocker. It was a very violent match, ending with a bulldog choke uh, to Danielson. Danielson faded. He didn't tap out, but he was knocked out, I suppose you could say. He was put to sleep, and the match ended. And then complete chaos ensued. Moxley puts the title in the bag. The members of the BCC, the Blackpool Combat Club, joined the ring with him, and they swarmed Danielson, stomped on him. Eventually, Wheeler Yuta took a plastic bag and tried to murder him,
Kill
ostensibly.
him.
He tried to kill him. Yeah, I mean, and the baby faces poured out to no avail. Eventually, finally, almost everyone in the locker room poured out and stopped it from continuing, but the damage had been done. Danielson was stretchered off, and he's going to be gone for the foreseeable future. Moxley, like I said, he was the record three-time holder of the title. Now he has lapped everyone. He's a four-time AEW World Champion, and I think his probably the biggest heel the company's ever had. I mean, twice now he's tried to murder somebody. Um, and not just somebody, but the AEW World Champion. So we got done with the show. We got in my front yard, and Jordan just went on a rant about how this finish was flatter than a plate of piss, and it was not the way you treat a champion. And so I want to give Jordan the floor. What did you think about this finish, and particularly Jon Moxley winning the AEW World Championship?
I mean, I didn't like. Well, one, I don't like Jon Moxley anyway, so that alone kind of sucked for me. But
Mm-hmm.
two, I'm just like, it's fine if you want to beat Bryan Danielson, but to just have it be, I'm putting him in a choke and having him pass out. I mean, just such a flat, uninspiring ending, And I mean, I know that's kind of what he's been doing in his matches. So it's not like it's something he's never done to anybody before, but to do it like in this kind of a spot, this big of a match where it's like going to be the end of Danielson's full-time career, I just felt like there's you could have done something better, you know, have him take a pin or interference costing him or what something like that. Just something more exciting, something more worthy of like a not a retirement match, but a uh, well, won a world title match in general. You want to have a, interesting ending to it. Um, but just for Bryan Danielson, his last full time wrestling career match, I felt like you could have figured something else out that would have been, more interesting than what they decided to go with.
It's interesting. Oftentimes is the case in AEW that the wrestlers, at least someone of Bryan Danielson's caliber, well, I shouldn't say that because I don't know if anyone really is, but of someone of that cachet, approaching that level of cachet, they get to decide their own finishes. It seems like for the most part, I think this is clearly what Bryan Danielson wanted to do. He wanted to go out, putting his faction over as the biggest heels in the company's history. Um, but I want to talk about something you said. Last week we did our top five favorite wrestlers in the world right now. Is it fair to say Moxley would be in your five least favorite wrestlers in the world right now?
Um,
Given his profile and how what the platform he has in AEW, would he be in your five least favorite?
yeah, I mean, probably like as far as how he's presented, like he's a main event guy that they are trying to present him as, and yeah, I just don't see it. I don't like it. I feel like, there's times where when he's talking about something that, and he has that makes sense, he
Mm-hmm.
can cut good promos. His matches aren't good at all, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think. Um, but yeah, I don't. It's like he's like a discount Stone Cold. This is kind of what he's trying to go for, I guess. Um, but yeah, it's not good. Whatever they're trying to do with him, especially now because I mean he's been going on this crusade against AEW, but you know no one really knows why. Like they don't haven't explained why he's doing it. He's just kind of giving cryptic messages every week, which I'm assuming will lead to him revealing it eventually. But yeah, I don't understand what the bone of contention is.
It's interesting. He's kind of notion that he's trying to prevent something really bad from happening to AEW. That he needs to be the top guy on the card to lead the charge when it happens. That he's warning everyone that something is coming. And then on Dynamite this week, the show opens with a cold open. He jumps in the back of his Dodge Ram with the other BCC members and says, "This is the new paradigm that AEW is. The wrestlers have gotten complacent. These guys have been handed big money. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have the passion that they need. They don't have the drive, and the BCC run things now. And if you don't have direction, they're gonna, you know, step out of the way or get stepped on. I guess he's gonna whip everyone into shape almost. And those two motives, they don't mesh. On one hand,
Yeah,
he's saying that he's now the boss of AEW. On the other hand, he's saying that he's trying to prevent something bad from happening to AEW that maybe Bryan Danielson couldn't have. That Bryan Danielson wasn't man enough or good enough champion to do.
yeah,
I I don't feel like his explanation on Dynamite is the end all be all. I think there is more to this than we know, but I think right now you look at he has been positioned sort of as the not to I don't mean to belabor the expression, but the final boss of AEW. That
yeah.
if you have to go through him in the BCC to get that title, and it's going to be a really hard obstacle to overcome. We saw Daniel Garcia, Hook, Orange Cassidy, Darby Allin, Adam Cole, Mark Briscoe, Jeff Jarrett, Private Party come out and try to stop them from hurting Danielson anymore, and no one really could until all of them were there, and the numbers had gotten too overwhelming. Who do you think is going to be the first to challenge John Moxley?
Well, first before that, can we I can just go back to the whole run-in thing at the end of WrestleDream.
Yeah.
The whole thing is like, okay, there's the BCC is obviously going to hurt Bryan Danielson very badly,
hmm
and they have a few guys come out, Darby, Orange Cassidy, like you just said, and none of them can do it. So then they trap Darby in the corner, and he's yelling at them to stop, and they're going to hurt him. Why did it take them crippling Daniel Bryan for then everybody else to come rushing out?
Maybe the
Like
lock's too far away, Jordan.
you
Maybe
all
it's
were just standing. Yeah, well, it's like you all just standing there watching this guy get, his neck broken, and obviously nobody who went out there can help him. So why? Because then, like, as soon as that happened, then like the entire locker room came out there and chased him off. And it's like you all could have done that at any time. Like it just, I hate how that just didn't make any sense. Like why, if, especially because they presented Danielson as this beloved wrestler by everybody.
Yeah.
Well, if you see that happening to this guy, why did it take you know everybody who could actually stop this from happening to run out there only after they've already crippled this guy? that was my main biggest contention with the whole ending to WrestleDream. Besides the the flat finish,
Right.
like it made no sense why it took everybody else so long to run out there and save Danielson. Like you could have done that at any point. Um, so that was my other bone of contention with WrestleDream. But to answer your question, um, his first defense, I mean, it kind of seems like they're positioning Darby, because obviously they wrestled before. Uh, Moxley, won Darby's title shot at WrestleDream.
Mhm.
Um, so he obviously, I'm sure is going to want to get, revenge for that. And then obviously he was the main focus of the guy trying to save Danielson, but he couldn't.
Yeah.
So and also too, if we're going with this whole Moxley and the BCC are, at war with AEW basically, then it, kind of would only make sense for the guy who's kind of seen as, I don't know, the heartbeat, I guess, so to
Yeah.
speak.
I think it's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Because I would say probably, after Danielson, it was probably Darby Allin, who people see as that kind of that fan favorite underdog.
Hmm.
Um, so that's probably where I think they're going to go next. Now I don't. Now maybe they have some people face him in between that.
Sure.
If you ultimately want Darby to be the one to dethrone Moxley, maybe they wait a little bit
Hmm.
and have him face some other people. Um, but I think he's going to be the guy who will eventually uh, beat Moxley for the title, or at
Right.
least that would make the most sense to me.
On Dynamite, they teased the, well, I won't say they teased the return of Kenny Omega, but the Elite celebrated his birthday, making him a cake, and then they poured entrails from an animal on it, I guess. It was very odd. And then Jack Perry said he didn't care if Kenny Omega died, which I didn't know you could say on TV 14 programming, but okay.
Yeah, it's
So
they've done and said worse. So
do you think there's an avenue here where Kenny Omega comes back, kind of like Goku in Dragon Ball Z, where he's been recovering,
yeah,
things have been happening, no one's been able to stop anything. He's going to come
ev-
back and just kind of save the day.
yeah, everybody else has
Maybe not
gotten
successfully, but
yeah, everybody else has gotten beaten up, and no one else can defeat whoever they're facing. So as far as like him coming back and then like challenging Moxley,
yeah. Well, think about it. He beat the first reign Moxley had. Kenny Omega's the man who beat him,
yeah,
and then he beat him again in a rematch. And then I guess together we watched a steel cage match. I think in Detroit where Kenny beat him in a steel cage. I think.
yeah.
Um,
Um, I mean, I don't I don't know if he would because it seems like he's going to come back and go after the elite, and uh, there hasn't really been any connection with him and Moxley recently. It's mainly been the Bucks
mhm.
calling him out, calling Omega out every week.
Yeah.
So I don't I don't know if they would because there hasn't been like a connection between anything that Moxley's been doing and the elite, has there? Or have I missed something?
Well, on Dynamite this week, for those who don't know, Jordan doesn't have the Turner Broadcasting. Something we talked about last week, I guess, or
Yeah, I
maybe
just kind of watched the highlights and
yeah, maybe probably
segments.
we talked about it, which it contributes to these ratings a lot. How a lot of people don't have access to Turner, which you know, anyways, that's not really important. So, yeah, if he doesn't, if unless we watch Dynamite together, he's watching highlights most of the time. Yeah, so the Young Bucks and Kazuchika Okada were in a match with the conglomeration. It was O'Reilly, Cassidy, and Rocky Romero. And the match got interrupted by the BCC. They run in the ring. They pretty much isolated Cassidy and stomped on him. Um, and, for trying to break up their assault of Danielson at WrestleDream. And then the Elite kind of just stood on the aisle and watched. And then the Dark Order ran down and Evil Uno was like, why aren't you guys helping? You're the EVPs. And
Okay.
then they met backstage and the Dark Order was like, Daniel Garcia really was the instigator. Daniel Garcia was like, you're the EVPs. You're supposed to be stopping this company from crashing. What are you doing? Why aren't you intervening?" And the Young Bucks were like, "This really isn't our problem." And they looked troubled by it, like they were conflicted or whether or not they should help or not. Obviously, Okada a few weeks ago, he had the match with Danielson for the title, and basically he got, the BCC circled the ring posts and he got distracted and lost a match because of it. So he sort of already has a reason to not like them.
Yeah,
Uh, on top of Moxley has always been a heel in New Japan, and he's had interactions with Okada there. So, um, but I don't know. I mean, I agree with you that they've been building towards the story with Omega and Ibushi versus the Young Bucks for a long time, and it seems like they've kept the titles on the Bucks so Ibushi and Omega can eventually beat them for it. So I don't know. It's hard to say. It's just an idea that popped in my mind. Is it going to be this kind of like Goku situation where he's off in other world training while everyone's getting their ass beat? He's going to come
yeah,
back and handle business. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I will say this. I don't think Omega's going to win the title. I think you're right. I think it's going to be Darby Allin.
yeah. So it's like, are you going to bring him back and have him lose in his first high-profile match back after being gone for so long? I mean,
Well, maybe he beats Jack Perry first, or I don't know. It's tough to say, but you got a point there. I mean, we're just going to throw him right at Moxley and he gets devoured. I mean,
yeah, that's. I mean, it depends on where they ultimately want to go. Like, if you ultimately want Darby to be the guy to win the title, then and I mean, if he goes and loses to Moxley, it's not going to really hurt Kenny Omega that much. I mean, he's got
no,
the
no,
he's got the cachet. He's always going to be a main eventer.
yeah,
Um,
he's figured in, as they say, right?
yeah, he's figured in. So it he can really go after anybody. I mean, every like all their champions are heels. So
Right.
I mean, he could go after if he wanted to go after the TNT title, if he wanted to go after the tag titles, because of the connection with the elite.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it kind of seems like Daniel Garcia is going to win one of those, maybe the TNT title.
Maybe.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it would make sense either way. I mean, I could definitely see them having Kenny come back and go after Moxley and be like, you're threatening this company and you're, trying to tear it apart and
Yeah.
the EVPs aren't doing anything about it, so I'm going to come back and do something about it.
Yes.
They could definitely do that and it would make sense.
Well, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds in WrestleDream and AEW's booking right now. I mean, we could do a whole episode just on that, I guess, but I don't really want to do that. What I want to talk about is I feel like this is as good of a time as any. Is Bryan Danielson? We've heard all week long since WrestleDream that his injuries are really severe. His neck injuries have really not only hampered his in-ring ability, but his quality of life. This guy has pushed himself to the limit and back again this year. The run he's been on really since WrestleDream last year against Zack Sabre Jr. when he came back from the arm injury. Really since then he's just been on an incredible run. I mean, I guess that's really good booking. WrestleDream and WrestleDream, Zack Sabre Jr. and then now it crescendos all the way to Moxley. I mean, we could go down the list and talk about how many excellent matches, match of the year contenders he's had, but what we don't know if he's going to come back. I mean, he needs neck surgery. I don't think that's a work. I think that's a shoot, brother. He's going to need
Yeah.
surgery before the end of the year. And he's got young kids and a family, and if he doesn't feel like he's willing to risk uh, his health, I don't think he might come back. This might have been his retirement match. Um, so I want to talk about uh, Bryan Danielson, the wrestler in his career, and pay tribute to we can have maybe this a little discussion right now. I think he's arguably, and he probably is the best wrestler of the century. I mean, you put him up against all the great guys of the 2000s in the 10s and now the 20s, and his career is incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, you're talking championships in Ring of Honor, WWE, and AEW. He's probably the greatest independent wrestler ever. One of the best baby faces in WWE of the last 25 years.
Mm,
And now in AEW, I mean, he came in 2021. You can argue he's the MVP of the company of the first 5 years. The matches he's had against other champions, culminating in winning that title All In against Swerve Strickland in this, month and a half run he's been on as a champion. I mean, what a career. How did you get introduced to Bryan Danielson? I've been born in 97, Jordan's 96. So, we weren't watching Ring of Honor 2005. Let's just be honest. So how did you get introduced to Danielson?
Um, well, it was NXT, that
Yeah.
very first iteration of NXT where it was they were had the veteran wrestlers and the rookie wrestlers, and he was the Miz. I think the Miz was his
Yeah.
veteran,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was the first time I saw him. Um, that that whole goofy format
Right.
of them doing like obstacle courses and stuff like that. That was the first time I saw him, and then yeah, I didn't think too much of him at the time, just because I didn't know much about him.
Right.
And then obviously they have the Nexus thing, and he gets fired immediately
Hmm.
and for choking Justin Roberts, and then uh, gets brought back at SummerSlam, and then everything career starts in WWE right there. So that was my first introduction to him, was that whole first NXT group.
Yeah. It's so ironic that like you said, I mean, you'd had to have really been a a real, I'm not gonna say a real wrestling fan, but you had to like independent wrestling and know the cachet that he had entering WWE and NXT. But it's so ironic they give him the Miz of all people to mentor him as a WWE superstar.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess he learned sort of the entertainment side of the WWE, but I mean, in terms of as a wrestler, it's night and day. I mean, the
yeah,
quality of work that they could put forth. But um, I guess for me, I watching, I wasn't watching WWE when he debuted with the Nexus. I have to be honest.
yeah.
So for me, I guess it was his feud with Cody Rhodes.
Okay.
Uh, right before he won Money in the Bank, I guess he was feuding with Cody Rhodes, maybe.
I think so. Yeah, I don't. I'm trying to remember what, because I remember he had the thing where he won Money in the Bank, and that was kind of when I think I really started paying attention to what he was doing.
Yeah,
Because before he was just kind of floating around. Um, and yeah, I can't remember if he won the Intercontinental or the U.S. title somewhere before that, and then he won Money in the Bank, and he beat Big Show for it, and he had the whole thing with AJ, and then for a while it was just the kind of the goofy comedy stuff he was doing in WWE
yeah,
with the whole with the AJ Lee thing, and then Team Hell No with Kane, and
yeah,
the therapy stuff, which was really stupid. Uh, and it's kind of, if you really think about it, I mean, it's pretty sad how the majority of his WWE run was, because he really only had that short time frame where he was like a true main event guy
yeah,
that they looked at as a main event guy. Because obviously he had the title win at WrestleMania 30, which was the culmination of the Yes movement.
yeah.
And then, I mean, after that, he got hurt so much, and then I think he won the Intercontinental title at, I think, WrestleMania a couple years after that, like 32 maybe. Um,
He won the title?
I think he won the Intercontinental title. It was at I'm trying to remember which WrestleMania it was. But I think it was like a
Oh,
ladder match.
yeah. Well, he won it at 31, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
and a lot
31. I
of
think
open
yeah,
the
it
show.
was the next year.
Yeah,
Yeah, he won it next year, and then he got hurt again and had to relinquish it.
yeah,
And then it was pretty much done after that. I think he retired after that. And then he was retired for however many years. Then he came out of it, won the WWE title, was a heel, lost it to Kofi Mania.
hmm
Um, and then So I mean, you really think about what his career would look like if he didn't have his AEW run.
Yeah.
I mean, his
Yeah.
AEW run was so much better than his WWE run by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's not to say his WWE run was, I mean,
no, it
it
was good. It
was
was
good.
successful. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
it you know, there was so much, there was so much dumb stuff they had him do in between there.
Yeah.
Like a lot of comedy stuff, like they do for a lot of guys. But
Yeah.
then you look at his AEW stuff, and it was him being more serious and him actually wrestling quality matches with really, quality opponents.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and besides that, like short window where he, had the whole yes movement against the authority, and then he won the title at WrestleMania 30. I mean, outside of that, I mean, he didn't do a whole lot of other serious programs.
Yeah. I think, it's an indictment on that era of WWE where you had a handful of guys who were the top of the top, the guys that, could you didn't really mess with, and then there were guys. Daniel Bryan was definitely on that second tier of guys, at least in terms of how they were how they were. I don't want to belabor this, but how they were figured in. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
he wasn't Cena, he wasn't Orton, he wasn't Batista, he wasn't even really Punk. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, so it's unfortunate, but um, do you have a favorite? I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but do you have a favorite Danielson moment?
Overall, his entire career.
Yeah, like just something that you think of, just immediately sticks out in your head.
Um, I mean, it's probably gonna be either him winning the title at Mania 30
Hmm.
or him just recently at All In when he won the title over Swerve.
Yeah,
I mean, two big title wins, two excellent environments. The crowd went crazy
yeah,
for both times. I mean, the whole yes, like the crowd coming into the ring and occupying Raw. That was a really cool moment.
hmm,
Um, yeah, I think the two title wins are probably up there as my two like kind of neck and neck
yeah.
moments in his career. But I mean, he's had a lot of
He's had a lot. Yeah,
great moments, and I remember the one where it was when he was involved with the Wyatt family, and he was like joined the Wyatt family for a short time, and he
hmm,
wasn't doing the whole yes thing, and he was like just kind of stone faced, and then there was in a steel cage match, and he ended up turning on Bray Wyatt, and I remember the crowd when he he got out of the Sister Abigail finisher from Bray, and he started doing the yes chanting. I mean, that was extremely loud pop
yeah,
for him, which in that era of WWE you didn't see very often.
hmm,
Not those crowd pops were few and far between compared to what they used to be. So that was another really cool moment for him. What about you? What do you got
yeah. I mean,
favorite?
his debut at all. I'm sorry, his debut at All Out 2021, where
I want to. Yeah, I forgot about that.
he comes out to face Adam Cole and Kenny Omega was fantastic. I think that's arguably a high point for AEW. Yeah, and him winning the title at All In with his family a few months ago was just special. Beating Swerve Strickland. Um, I've loved seeing him come out to the final countdown at AEW because you you have to respect how much money Tony Khan's spending to make that very special moment happen. Just the gravity of it and how fleeting it is. How you're not going to have many of those moments. So yeah, yeah, call me prisoner of the moment, but I think it's probably got to be the all in. Just his family was there, his kids were there, watching his kids run around the ring afterwards while he's holding the title because he had lost He'd lost in so many matches for the title to that point. Hangman had beaten him, MJF had beaten him, Kenny Omega drew to a tie with him.
Yeah.
You know, he tried so many times and failed, and finally to see that moment happen at All In was special. But yeah, seeing him return was great too. When he returned from his first retirement, I suppose.
Yeah.
That was great. But I wasn't watching. I wasn't watching weekly when he was in the middle of the Yes movement. When Punk left, I pretty much tuned out of WWE.
Yeah.
I'd see things, but I didn't watch WrestleMania 30, for example. So I've seen. I mean, obviously, I've seen it since then, and it's special, but it didn't land with me the same way that All In did. Um, Well, Danielson is a wrestler's wrestler, and to him, the best way to tell a story is in the ring. It's in matches, and so I think both of us wanted to talk about some of our favorite Danielson matches. We dialed it into five each, and I mean, Danielson is a great talker. He can work as a babyface or a heel, but god damn, he's I don't want to say anyone he's the best in the ring ever, but he's as good as anyone has ever been. I would put him on par with the best of the best to ever work in the ring. The Billy Robinsons, the Kurt Angles, the Ric Flairs, I mean, I would put him right on par with Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, any of those guys. I think in his prime, and really even as far as this year, he is as good as anyone has ever been in that ring. So I'm gonna give you the floor. What are your five? No, we're not gonna rank these necessarily unless you have one that you think is better than any other. But what are your five favorite Danielson matches?
Uh, all right. And this was like a really tough list to to just pick out five because he's had so many great matches. I mean, just this year alone,
Yeah.
he's had, some unbelievable matches. But I would say my favorite one that I watched was probably Danielson versus Omega at Grand Slam 2021.
Mhm.
Because at that point, I mean, I hadn't watched a ton of AEW. Hadn't even really watched a whole lot of Kenny Omega either. So it was kind of my first real introduction to him, and then getting to see Danielson wrestle. Uh, but that whole match was great. The environment was great. The crowd was really really into the match. I mean, they gave it a standing ovation before the guys even touched. So um, that one was probably my favorite out of his matches. Um, and then I would say my other one was Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. at WrestleDream. Because again, hadn't watched a ton of Zack Sabre Jr. Had heard a lot about him. I know this was kind of a dream match. Two really good technical wrestlers. So I was excited to watch that. It did not disappoint. Um, and then in WWE, his match against John Cena at SummerSlam 2013, when he won the title uh, from Cena. Cena obviously he had the bad, I think elbow, he had a bad elbow injury or something, and really a great match, and actually one of the better Cena matches that I watched. Because I mean, obviously you're going against Bryan Danielson, you kind of have to step up your game, open up the repertoire a little bit, and Cena did that. So a great match there, and I think it was um, kind of a start to that whole Yes Movement thing because I remember even before the match they had the whole segment of Cena picking his opponent,
Hmm.
and like the whole like crowd when he said I pick Daniel Bryan, the whole crowd went crazy. So I think that kind of was you know a first glimpse into how truly popular he was and how big he was gonna be. Uh, so that was another good one. And then obviously Danielson versus Swerve, where he won the title at All In. And for my last one, and again, there's so many great ones. Um, I said Danielson versus MJF in the Iron Man match at Revolution
Mm, yeah.
last year. Um, Obviously, we don't see a ton of matches go 60 minutes. I mean, it's a really hard thing to do to keep,
Mhm.
fan interest for an hour, but they definitely did it. Um, both guys really, really good. A lot of back and forth. Um, and yeah, that's my five.
It's a good list, man. That's a
A
very
lot of
good.
a lot of recent matches, but I think it just kind of speaks to what kind of how crazy of a run he was on the last couple years.
Absolutely. In a few of those matches we watched together, the MJF match, all Revolution 2023 was great. Went over an hour. And that match, I think, proved to a lot of people that MJF is not just an average worker, or not just a good worker. He's a great worker. And like you said about John Cena, John Cena gets in the ring with him and has to. John Cena is a really good wrestler and just was never able to. Well, I shouldn't say never, but for most of his run, he was not able to open up the repertoire, like you said, and use all of his moves because they couldn't afford to lose him. But when you're in the ring with someone like Danielson, you can do things in a safer way. You're a little bit more. You're able to use more of your arsenal against someone like Danielson because it's not going to backfire on you. And MJF was able to do that in that match. Um, we talked about the match versus Swerve briefly, the moment at least at the ending, but that match is fantastic. I went with five different matches for you know just conversation's sake, but some of those matches would certainly be in my list. Um, to piggyback off of something Jordan said, Danielson, Zack Sabre Jr. at WrestleDream, their sequel at the New Beginning in Osaka this year was a fantastic rematch. Um, the whole idea that in the first match, Danielson won, but it wasn't by submission. He had to strike. He had to knock Sabre out, and Sabre wasn't exactly expecting that. He thought they had sort of a gentleman's agreement that this was a grappling match, that these guys are going to win this on the mat. And Sabre entered this rematch with a more open mind and used more of his repertoire and won the match. But it was a fantastic contest. Easily a match of the year contender for me, and one of the best matches I've ever seen. Um, I picked Danielson versus Brock Lesnar in Survivor Series 2018. This is champion versus champion, and the first 10 minutes, Lesnar just battered Danielson, and Danielson comes back and just even though he was a heel at the time, having just turned heel on AJ, has a tremendous babyface comeback. Uh, you know that he started through a low blow while the ref wasn't looking, but turned the tides, and eventually Lesnar wins. But Lesnar sold his ass off in this match, made Danielson look great, and I just think it's one of the better matches he had in WWE, especially against a guy of Lesnar's size. Um, my number three would be, you know, Danielson and Nigel McGuinness had literally like a dozen singles matches together. And many of them were on major shows or Ring of Honor pay-per-views. Most recently, they had a match at Grand Slam in AEW. And they have so many great matches together. I picked Ring of Honor Unified 2006. It's their third singles match together. Um, Sort of a rubber match. Nigel McGuinness was the pure champion. Danielson was the Ring of Honor world champion. Pure wrestling rules are, there's limits on rope breaks and you can't punch people. And, it's more kind of what we consider traditional old school professional wrestling, like catch as catch can. And McGuinness won that first match. Danielson won the second. And they had the third match under pure rules to unify both titles. Um, it's a phenomenal contest. It's on the Ring of Honor YouTube channel, I think. It's fully available and well worth watching. And you could go maybe Driven 2007 for Ring of Honor fans out there watching. There's probably other matches you could pick, but this is my personal favorite. Um, Excuse me. Number four, I would go with. This is really tough. I his match versus Kenta in Ring of Honor. I can't think of the year off the top of my head. Maybe 2007 is fantastic. Kenta, created the GTS, the Busaiku knee. The guy is just what a wrestling mind. Still in the business today, although he's not nearly the same physically. But that was a great match in Ring of Honor. That is also, I think, available on the Ring of Honor YouTube page. And lastly, I have to go with Danielson versus Osprey Dynasty this year, which is as good of a match as I've ever seen in my entire life. I mean, the story's simple. The best wrestler today in Osprey versus arguably the best wrestler of all time in Danielson. Um, it was the proving ground for Osprey to show that he was a main event guy in AEW. If people already weren't, convinced of that, and the match is fantastic. Uh, it's worth buying the pay per view. I'm sure it's cheaper now than it was when it came out, $50. I'm sure it's probably less than $50 now, but it is well worth buying the pay per view just to see that match because it is that fantastic. Um, Dave Meltzer gave it 6.5 stars. I mean, I know maybe star ratings don't mean anything, but 6.5 is pretty incredible. It's pretty wild. So yeah. Anyways, um, Jordan, any last thoughts on the American Dragon Bryan Danielson before we sign off this today? I mean, what a career we've been fortunate enough to watch, and it's Dynamite's not going to be the same without him.
No, it isn't. I think too, in talking about this, is just you think about all of the number of top wrestlers that he's faced.
Mm.
I mean, is there anybody else alive today that has wrestled the guys he's wrestled over his entire career? I mean, the big names, the great wrestlers. I mean, we just named our favorite matches, and I mean, there's tons of other ones that are definitely worthy of being called some of his best matches. I mean, we didn't even talk about matches he had with CM Punk.
Mhm.
He had matches with AJ Styles. I mean, he even wrestled, I believe his last WWE match was against Roman Reigns.
Yeah, he had
Uh,
a series of great matches with Roman that we
yeah,
didn't
I
even
mean,
with Edge that we didn't mention.
yeah, so I mean, he wrestled Roman, when he's on the come up as the tribal chief and the top guy in WWE. So I mean, to then have him go over to AEW and then wrestle, who's who of talented wrestlers over there. I mean, just the guys that he faced. I don't know if we're gonna see a guy who has that many guys wrestled under his belt like Bryan does.
Yeah, I mean you think of the 30 or 40 or 50 best wrestlers of the last 20 25 years, and he's at the top of almost all those I mean, he's wrestled almost all of those guys. It's insane the amount of guys he's worked: Jericho, Moxley, Omega, Kenta, Jushin Liger, Cena, Punk, Orton, Batista. It's incredible. It really, really is. So um yeah.
Is he done?
You asked me if I think he's retired.
Yeah, I don't. Did we answer that question? If we thought he was actually done or not?
I don't know if we answered it. I don't think he's done yet, but it's if his neck is as bad as people have made it sound like it is, I don't know. Um, but I hope he's not because there are a lot of young guys he still hasn't wrestled yet. And guys who haven't are not champions yet. That a match with Danielson would really solidify their place in history. And I don't know, it's tough. I mean, how often will he wrestle if he does come back? Who will he be working against? Uh, does he have a rematch with Moxley down the line? Who really knows? How long will it take for him to come back? But I'll say this: if Sting can come back, if Adam Copeland can come back, if Paige or Saraya can come back, I think he can come back.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think he's done. It's for the simple fact that I can't see his last time in the ring being him being almost killed with a plastic bag. You know,
Yeah,
like because I mean we spent all this time talking about how much of a legend he is in wrestling, and I don't think you're going to have his last moment in in the wrestling business be him getting stretchered out.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so even if it's not him actually being involved in any kind of big story, of him just coming back and saying, "Look, this is my last one, and this is who I want to wrestle." I've always wanted to wrestle you, or I want to wrestle you one more time, whoever it is, I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but something like that, at the very least.
Yeah.
I can't see, as beloved as Bryan Danielson is, I can't see him not ending on a high note.
Yeah. You know, I go back to this conversation. You talk about the best guys of the 2000s of this century, and Tanahashi just announced he's retiring at the beginning of 2026. So 2025 will be his last full year. Cena's last full year will be 2025. You have to imagine Randy Orton's not long for announcing his retirement. AJ Styles, you know, the injury he's uh, suffered a few weeks ago. It sounds like he might be out for an entire year.
First match back.
Yeah, first match back, and he's going to be out for a year. It sounds like. It's an injury that ends NFL players' seasons, and he's almost 50. So
Yeah.
it's sad. The guys that shaped our love for wrestling when we were younger are slowly whittling away. I can't imagine Punk's going to be wrestling much longer. So I wanted to take this time and acknowledge our love for Bryan Danielson and what he's meant to WWE and AEW and to a lesser extent Ring of Honor in the 2000s and how much we love this guy because we both think he'll come back, but we don't know when and we don't know how long. And when he does return, how long will he be wrestling again? We don't know. So I think this is as good of a time as any to pay tribute to his career. And anything else you'd like to add, Jordan?
Uh, no, I mean, I guess the only thing I would say is, the wrestlers that, you know, we love and other people love to enjoy watching them while we can.
Yes.
Because I think when I was a kid watching all my favorite wrestlers, now, like you said, they're all retiring,
Mhm.
you know. So, I'm sure, we'll probably do more of these for guys as they retire and we look back on their careers and everything. But I think it's a good reminder to just enjoy watching these guys while they can still go.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. Wrestling fans, just enjoy wrestling. Enjoy what you have while you have it because you don't know how long it'll last. So, with that, we say goodbye for this week and we'll be back next week. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, everybody.